Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Blood, Sweat, and Gear with coaches Skip Hill and Andrew Barry. I'm Scott McNally. All of our programming is brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK for additional savings. Third-party tested, great supplements. Hit me up if you have any questions. We're also brought to you by SupplementSource.ca for our Canadians. Great deals that change week to week. STROM Sports Nutrition for those of you in the UK. And, of course, go to Amino Asylum. Use our code THINK, but I can't tell you that link, basically, for a lot of reasons. Anyway, we got a great topic today. We're going to talk about arm training. You guys have freaking loved all the training talk that we've done. So I don't know which one you guys want to get started with this. We're also going to take all your questions. Leave us questions for the next show. And if you're not subscribed yet, let me encourage you to, because we have several bodybuilding podcasts that come out each week. Tons of education and entertainment from coaches like this. Tons of experience. So where do we go with this, gentlemen?
Well, where do you start? Where do you put your arm training? Yeah, but I'm not a very good example. Okay, well, I'm not a very good example because I don't have very good body parts, but I could get by. It's like of all my less crappy body parts, my arms are less crappy than everything else.
You've got some arms.
They've never really taken. Compared to everything else, well, I'll take that.
When he's the only guy in the room, they're pretty darn good, you know.
Yeah, exactly. If I pose down with my kids, I'm gonna win.
Skip, you are much bigger than you look on the internet, number one, and your arms definitely stand out, even at like the Arnold Expo. People don't get it. And I think, yeah, it's your camera perspective. You don't look as big as you are, but you got some really good arms on you. So I think you should tell us, how did you do that?
Well, first, XOXO. I appreciate that. Thank you. No, let's see. Well, and this is where I was going to go with you, Andrew, and you too, Scott, to find out where you guys put, like to start off with where you guys put your arm training relative to everything else. Because I treat it as kind of secondary. I don't like to finish with arms as an example. That's why push-pull works for me, because my arms aren't a priority. And I think when arms aren't a priority, that's cool. But if they were a priority, they wouldn't grow very well that way. So I tend to put them on their own day later in the week. And I don't consider it a rest day, but it's not one of those leg or back days that is so incredibly demanding on my CNS that my HRV is going to drop considerably after I get done training that night while I sleep. So they don't take as much of a priority. But here's the funny thing about arm training, and I learned this about 12 or 15 years ago when I realized, okay, I have some really crappy body parts that I need to put arms, as kind of not on the back burner, but not as a priority. And when I did that, they grew more. And what I mean is I didn't train them as frequently, and they grew more. And that's what really got me to the point with my clients to look at their arm training, because you guys have probably seen this too. When arms are a priority, what's the first thing people do? They train them more frequently. They train them with more volume, typically. And then their answer is, when I ask, well, how did your arms respond? Did they grow? Well, they kind of, yeah, but not much. That's typically the answer. Yeah, they start to hurt. Exactly. So I've never seen a direct correlation between increasing arm work, for some, but across the board, more work or more frequency doesn't usually bring people's arms up if they're a weakness. And I kind of think that the reason for that is they were already overtrained. Arms, I think, are easy to overtrain. Yeah. And I think that's why when people struggle with them as a weakness, their response to do more work is counterproductive. It doesn't seem, it seems the intuitive thing to do, but it's not, and it ends up being counterproductive. So I will pull my clients. The first thing I do if their arms are weak is I pull their arm work back, their frequency back, and their volume back. And they hate it, and they usually fight it. But then they start to see the increases. And the other thing with arms is when you see progress, You're not seeing it like you would in compound exercises, like your squats, like your rows and deads and things like that. You're seeing an incremental increase of a couple reps here or there, or 5 pounds on, dumbbell curls, or 10 pounds on tricep extensions. So there isn't this huge dramatic, oh yeah, they're growing. So I don't know. Have you guys seen the same thing?
Yes and no.
So no.
I feel well. No. And here's where I'm going with this: is that I feel like arms is one of those body parts that you need the variation from time to time in volume. Meaning, like I might go 4 weeks with doing 2 or 3 sets for bis and tris that whole weekly. 9 sets total in 3 weeks, and then I might actually add a dedicated arm day for the next 3 weeks and hit them with more like 10, 12 working sets. I feel like that variation going back and forth, and I feel like you can use this with all body parts, because we always talk about improvement, progressive overload being a finite thing where you're just adding more pounds to the bar, right? Well, with arms, by the time you hit 25, 26, you're probably about as strong on your bis and tris, press downs, curls, not your close grip benches, but like you're going to the ceiling for arm strength gets capped pretty quickly. While as like you alluded to, Skip, your ceiling for, say, your leg press, your squats, your deadlifts, your rows, your presses, those can keep going up for, into your 40s even, Yeah. You get where I'm going with that? So I feel like you need to change some other factor. You need to change something in terms of progressing. And for me, that's volume. So I like to alternate periods of time with lower volume with periods of time with slightly higher volume. And even those higher volume days or weeks could be like, I'll do one exercise at the end of chest day for triceps. I'll do one exercise at the end of my back for biceps. And then I'll have a dedicated arm day, like you said, like end of the week. I don't count it as a rest day. I don't really count it as a full training day. Like I'm not pushing a whole bunch of intra workout and insulin, and I'm not feeding myself like I'm getting ready to do a 2-hour leg workout. It's literally probably a 45-minute session. I usually do calves that same day. I do abs that same day. I probably do cardio right afterwards. So it's like one of those days where it's like, did I train? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know what to call it. And I'm big on chasing the pump with arms. And for the reason of tendonitis, like I just don't think continuously trying to lift more weight in those, isolation exercises is good for your triceps, because you're already doing compound exercises like you alluded to with your presses, your rows, etc. So I do think, just to reiterate, change in volume over time, whether up or down. Okay. And, not trying to go too heavy.
Yeah. I will say this. I remember, my arms, my biceps specifically, hadn't been a stronger body part. Like just genetically, they didn't seem to be great. And all the guys that I knew that had really good arms had said, oh, I don't really go heavy with arms, right? And I've heard that a lot. But then I looked at it, like my friend VJ. VJ had like biceps and pecs were like 2 of his great muscles, which they're good muscles to have as a bodybuilder, because they're those show muscles. You know what I mean? You look awesome in a t-shirt when you got huge pecs and biceps. So, but then I watched him train, and like him not going heavy was still heavy to me. So I realized, like, okay, so it still means I need to go heavier than I am. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not saying like, I'm not like getting like the Olympic bar out and putting 225 on it, but I did find pushing myself a little bit more helped. So I would say that said, though, I do agree with both you guys across the board. I think arms are generally highly overtrained, especially you get a guy who's doing push-pull legs and he's like, hey, can I put a 7th day in? And it's just arms. And I'm thinking to myself, and this is the way I break it down too. I'm like, so on your chest day, you hit chest, and when you hit your chest, and then every compound movement, you're hitting your triceps. And then you're doing shoulders, you're doing overhead press, you're hitting your triceps. And then you're doing direct tricep work. And then you do that again, 5 days later. How many sets is that total? Now we've got like a dozen sets, and you want to add an arm day on top of that. I don't think that that's the answer. I found for myself, it's been a mixed bag, like you said, Andrew. It's not something that's ever been written in stone. Sometimes I'll give them more attention, and other times I try to back off. I found that if I do go for too long, too hard, that the elbows do take a beating.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you guys this: as far as the compound training, because I've got my own theories on this, and it's better when we don't agree. I think that as we advance through our years of training with heavy compound movements, especially for back, chest, and shoulders, obviously for pulling and pushing, I think that the heavier those exercises get, your rowing, your pressing, your overhead pressing, I think that starts to add considerably to arm size.
Absolutely.
And I think for anybody who disagrees, not you guys, but if anybody listening disagrees, because I wondered why you were explaining about how much involvement your triceps get with pressing, or how much involvement your biceps get with pulling, that some people will go, oh no, it's secondary, it's really not that much. I'll tell you this, to anybody who says that, take a month off of training, or when you take a month off of training because you're sick or whatever, and you come back to heavier pressing, or you come back to heavier pulling, you tell me that your tries aren't sore that first workout back after pressing heavier with chest and shoulders, or even with pulling. And pulling is a little bit different in the sense that it's a little bit more brachialis than it is, unless you're doing a lot of undergrip stuff. And a lot of undergrip stuff is just, quite frankly, I think is more of there's a vulnerability there for really messing up your biceps if your angle of pull isn't right. And even advanced guys, even pros, and I can think of 212 in particular, who, the angle was just obviously off, because if you're rowing heavy, the bicep shouldn't be in a position to be vulnerable, but if you tear it, it most definitely was. So the reason I asked you guys that is because I do think that over time, I think that a lot of arm development as we advance doesn't mean you don't still need direct arm work, but I think it backs up what we're saying, that because I agree, I don't think arm training needs to be heavy. I think if you're curling, for those guys who are curling 225, I don't see the arm size involved in that, and I see you asking for trouble with poundages like that. There are exceptions. There are the Justin Harrises who can do 225 with lying tricep extensions, and I just always look at that with such awe, because I want to do that, and there is no way that I'm going to be able to ever do that without ripping something.
Yeah, I can't argue with any of that, man. When I tried to start growing my back, I noticed that my biceps came up with it. There's no question about it.
So in terms of like exercise selection, are there, like we did with chest, I know like we kind of disagreed a little bit about how to, and I think you and me disagreed, and Scott was kind of in the middle, because he'll do one thing sometimes and then he'll do kind of the other way the other time, which is great. How do you set up your arm workout? Do you always do all triceps first? Do you open with a particular exercise, a particular type of movement? Or do you do, like for instance, just to throw something out there, like some people, they train all triceps first, then they train all biceps afterwards. Some people, they like to alternate a biceps exercise and then do a triceps exercise. And then some people like to superset a bi and tri exercise set to set and get that really nice pump in the arms as you're doing the whole workout. Where do you stand on like, say, those options, Skip?
I always do bis first. And it's a good question, because I've changed it. I say I always. Over the last probably 3 or 4 years, I always do biceps first. And the main reason is because I'm trying to protect my elbows when it comes time to do tricep work. Now, the exception to that is obviously if I'm on a push-pull, but I don't usually do that. If I have a dedicated arm day, it's biceps prior to triceps, because once I have blood in there, and basically my elbows are warm and my triceps tendon feels less vulnerable. And when I get into tricep work, it only takes me 2 or 3 warm-up sets. I'm ready to go for tries. So for me, it's a safer or a better alternative. And I also think that for the older demographic, I think it's a good way to go. Now, you can't come into biceps with guns a-blazing, and you have to make sure that you're plenty warm. Move in. We've talked about this before. I have my openers, so I will always open triceps with press downs. Maybe it might be a rope, it might be a V-bar, it might be an easy curl type bar, but it's going to be a press down, because that is going to get my elbows warm with the least amount of vulnerability. I would never go to like a I hate the term skull crusher. Yeah, but that's, everybody knows what it is. I get that.
Everyone knows
calm line tricep extension. Yeah,
is it also a French press? Is that the?
Okay, there you go. Yeah, you're going old school.
Yeah.
Uh, in old school, I always thought when I would hear French press, I would think that that was overhead versus lying down. But whatever,
Okay.
I may be completely wrong on that. But the point is there to open with something like that, I think is asking for problems. An overhead dumbbell extension, I think,
Yeah.
is asking for problems, and it comes down to as well the angle. Where the elbow is, the upper arm in relation to the torso, because that angle has to be more open when it's closed. And it's always difficult to explain when we're through words, when we're talking about this. But if the angle between the upper arm and the torso is more closed, then the tricep tendon, the elbow itself is in a more vulnerable position. When it's open, then it's far less of a chance that you're going to be putting as much stress. And I would go as far as to say this. I think the vast majority of people who have torn a tricep or had really bad tendonitis from doing any type of overhead dumbbell work, that angle was not as open as it should be. Whether it's skull crushers, whether it's overhead dumbbell extensions, that sort of thing. So I tend to leave those movements for the middle to the end of the workout. And I am not, one more thing too, I'm not a big fan of close grip benching for triceps. I think that you're getting so much tricep involvement on your shoulder and chest pressing that to me, it's redundant. I figure you're already pressed. Now, sometimes I'll finish with dips, but if I'm finishing with dips on a machine like a hammer strength or something, I'm more focused on that finishing contraction than I am really moving a lot of weight, because to me, I might as well just be pressing.
I'm with Skip that I like to warm the tricep. Well, I like to warm the arm up first with like some sort of cable, whether it be like a cable curl. Maybe I'll do that, or like a tricep rope extension or a V grip or whatever. I definitely want to start that out, then going straight into a compound movement. And for me, I know that I've done it all sorts of ways. The thing I always go back to, if I'm doing an arm day, to answer your question, Andrew, I like to do one bicep, then one tricep, one bicep, one tricep. Yeah, exercise.
One set or one exercise?
One exercise. Okay. That way,
do you ever do it the other way?
Absolutely. But I always seem to go back to that. And I think the reason I like it is that, say, like I start with tricep extensions with a V grip, and then I go to a cable curl, single arm, almost like a concentration type curl with a cable. When I go back to like a heavier tricep movement next, then I feel like my triceps are super fresh. You know what I mean? Like if I go from one tricep exercise to a second tricep exercise, then I feel like I don't have quite as much in me. So I've always liked that. I like to go from one tricep exercise to one bicep exercise, one tricep, one bicep. And by the end of that, my arms are just freaking pumped like hell. And like you were kind of saying at the beginning of the conversation, it's not a real taxing workout. It's like a fun workout. You know what I mean? By the time you're done, you don't feel like you're going to puke in a bucket.
Well, I was also going to add to that point of what you said about like you're fresh again. It's almost better than being fresh when you go back to that second tricep exercise, because they're already like propriocepted or whatever you want to call it. Like there's already that mind muscle connection. There's still some blood in there. They're pumped. So it's almost like better than walking in and having it being fresh, because like you're going to be stronger now that they're activated, they're warmed up, there's blood in there, but you've also had that rest because you've been training your biceps for 4 or 5 sets or whatever. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So is that what you do?
So I kind of do I pick what I do for arms based on how many people are in the gym and where they are in relation to the machines and stuff I want to use. Right. Because, well, like I think my preferred usually, especially during contest prep when things are looking good and, you get the arms out and everything's getting veiny and pumped up. I love supersetting like a buy and try back and forth. I just getting that crazy pump, practicing your poses in between, because like you guys, like you mentioned,
that can be fun.
It's fun because if you're not born with a great set of arms, like we all have friends that, and we've had guests on here, like Carlos, for instance. When we had Carlos on, you've seen him up close, right, Scott? Like his tricep just hangs off the bone when it's cold. It's pretty wacky. That's not me. And I think that's not you guys either. You guys got to have blood in there to see them, same way as me. Yeah. So So yeah, I really like getting that really nice pump. Very conservative on the weight, very very strict with the form. I'm right there with you guys in terms of I open with a tricep press down. I open with some kind of bicep curl that doesn't put my wrist in a compromising position. Meaning, like I would never start with a dumbbell preacher curl. Okay. Because that's one exercise I've torn my bicep on. Like I want to start with something that I can kind of work into opening my wrist up basically. So I'll do something more like a hammer curl, maybe a crossbody hammer curl, a cable curl where using those flexible D handles instead of the metal ones so that I can kind of turn my wrist in a way that feels most comfortable. Yeah. Cause I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to like tearing muscles is your wrist position in relation to tearing muscles in the arms is your wrist position. Like I've never heard of anyone tearing a muscle doing a hammer curl, but I have heard of people tearing muscles doing preacher curls. I was one of them, you know?
Sure.
And also on that point, I've never heard of anyone tearing a tricep on a press down, but I've heard of plenty of people tearing them on a close grip bench press or over a line extension, French press, whatever you want to call it. But I do want to point out, or I want to bring up one workout. It's one of John Meadows' arm workouts that I really loved. It was from one of his programs. I can't remember which one, but you take 4 exercises for biceps and 4 exercises for triceps, and you literally do them one after another in an 8-set superset or 8-set giant set.
Wow.
Dude, I'm talking, you do 3 rounds of that. You get out of the gym in about 25, 30 minutes and you are smoked. Your arms are full. It's a great feeling. It's not something you can do every single time. Like maybe do 2-3 weeks in a row and then put that away for a while. But it's definitely, let's say you get a pump, especially if you're using some Cialis and some insulin and some other pump agents too. Yeah.
My whole philosophy in everything in life is progression. If I'm not progressing, I am frustrated. You know, back in the 90s, I was known as the guy who put muscle mass on people who were stuck. There were things happening in the industry that weren't good. And in April of 2003, Doug and I started True Nutrition. We put the money into the jug, into the bag. That's where the money goes. We're in lab coats. We're in the back. We're manufacturing this stuff. So if it's not worthy enough for me, it's not worthy enough for my business partner, it's not worthy for you. Whether you're a bodybuilder, a triathlete, whoever you are, whatever your goal is, it is customized to you. I developed my reputation as a no BS kind of guy. I'm Dante Trudell, half owner of True Nutrition.
So, and I'm with you too. Skip, I was going to ask you, are you with us as well? It sounds like, because Andrew said, you know, he really tries to get the focus on more of a pump with his arms. You know, I want to be clear, you know, as much as I like progressive overload, I'm not a fan of being like progressive overload with arms. You know, are you looking to, I know that you said you always get a good pump in the gym. Is that more of your focus trying to work with volume, or is there an element of progression with your arm work?
I would say that my arm work is a little bit more deliberate. I'm looking less for a pump because I'm going to get a pump anyway, because I do pump quite easily. But I'm looking more for contract. Like I don't know if you guys have this or not. This is a good example. Okay, let's say we're using something like a machine preacher curl that allows for, and I'd like to use a machine preacher curl that allows for a really strong contraction at the top and less of a more dramatic stretch at the bottom. I want the stretch, but I don't want that to be the main. Let's put it this way. If it's a strive machine, I'm not going to load it so that it's heaviest in the stretch position. I'm going to load it so it's heaviest in the top position. I want to be able to hold at the top, but this is why I focus on contraction. There are times, vast majority of the time, when I do exercises like that I will only be able to finish about 2/3 of the rep. And I might be able to do 10, 12 reps, but I can't finish to the top. So I train arms lighter with exercises like that so that I can get full stretch, full squeeze, which I do on pretty much anything anyway. But I'm not coming at it from a power or overload position like you're saying. I'm looking for very deliberate stretch and squeeze, more so than any other muscle groups that I'm training in the gym. Yeah. So yes, I get the pump. I'm not really chasing. Here's an example. I will not train biceps and triceps alternating. I am way too OCD. Once I'm into a muscle group, I'm staying in that fucking muscle group, and I am not going to finish until I'm done.
Okay.
And then I move on. Going back and forth, to me, it's just my own personal thing. It's not like it's bad. It's not that. But to me, it would be distracting to me to go back and forth. So it's funny because you guys do that. You both do that. And I'm like, yeah, no, I would. If we were training arms together and you said you want to do that, I'd be like, no, you're on your own, bro.
I could do it, though. I mean, I've done it every way. It's just the thing that I keep gravitating toward, you know, like that's just my jam.
Can I ask you guys a question?
I don't care too much about the pump because it doesn't look very good because I have elbow sleeves on. And I'll admit, this is the vanity part that I'm going to be completely transparent about. There are times when I'm in really good condition, I go, God, I wish I didn't have to wear my arm sleeves today. It looks so much better to have, because, we all have that vain component where you're going to look your best. Your arms are going to look their best when they're full blown. And I would even argue that training biceps after triceps is even better from a visual standpoint. Because when you train your bis and you got all that blood in there, you're looking at your tris, you're looking in your bis and they're like, okay, they're good, but my triceps are flat. There's no blood in there.
I'll just throw this in there before
so
you
there
say
is a vanity component.
Before you said that, Andrew. We got to move on soon. So say what you were going to say, but also let's wrap this up with anything that we want to let people know. Anything we haven't talked about on this topic.
I don't know if I should ask
that we think is important.
All right. It was more of a general question about what you guys feel about like those prime and strive machines where you can overload a different part of the movement. Do you? I don't know. This is just my lack of education on it. Do you think they're better for building muscle if you overload the lower part of the movement or the upper part of the movement versus? Does it make a difference? That's what I'm asking.
Man,
or is it just for strength? Is it just for strength development if you were weak in a particular phase of the strength curve? That's what I'm asking, because I don't think it makes a damn difference in terms of muscular growth.
I don't think it does for muscle growth. I think it depends what you're looking for out of the exercise, in the sense that I would rather we're staying focused on arms here right now, but I'm trying to equate it to other movements too. And I don't think my philosophy would change. With arms, especially with bicep, I want that peak at the top. I want to be able to hold it. I rarely do rhythmic reps when it comes to bis. It's a stretch and hold. It's a stretch. That's curl and hold, I guess, is a better. I hold near every rep on a curl. That's just something that I know that I've got control. I know that I'm not putting myself in a vulnerable position. So when it comes to strive or it comes to prime where you're overloading a part of that, I would always overload the top. There's more of a vulnerability at the bottom in the stretch position. Arguably, there's more fibers firing in the stretch position, so there's more potential for growth. But I don't know if that's all. I think that sounds great on paper, but I don't know if that's actually going to pan out from a practical standpoint when applied.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, whether it does or doesn't, I like it. Like, I enjoy that, and I feel like it makes the workout more fun to me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
because there's a new variable.
Exactly, because it's different. You know what I mean? Same thing like when we all first got into bands, like back in the when John Meadows really started using bands, and then everybody else started using them. I had fun with bands just because it was different. You know what I mean? It like made the workout exciting to feel the strength curve change.
Okay. I'm over here rolling my eyes because I hate bands. I hate bands and I hate chains unless you're a power lifter.
Yeah,
but that's just
you represent an old school elite FPS too.
Yeah,
exactly. Now, from a powerlifting standpoint, I think that there's a lot of. Yeah, Dave's like, well, he's fired. Good thing he doesn't watch the podcast.
Where I do think they're really helpful, like the certain machines that have like a crappy strength curve on them. Sure. If you put a band on it,
one.
My what do you call it? My converging chest press and many other chest press where it's got like a funky feel. Uh-huh. It's got a funky feel, and I put the band on it, and it changes. There's a
lot of rows that are like that too. There's a lot of rows like that too, where it's super heavy to get it going, and then it's just like, so you need some band tension to try to make it equal when you get it all the way to get that peak contraction that you're so concerned with, Skip, so you can hold it and squeeze.
You just don't want to. I think Skip's against it because it became so popular and that everybody was using them.
I don't disagree with that. There are some
and-
exercises. There are some exercises that I think it can be. That I think it can be beneficial. I think that it is vastly overused.
Not anymore.
100%.
The reverse. The reverse
Did you guys see
hack is still right.
Yeah, about 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I got into this argument because at my gym in Vermont, all these kids were doing 2 plates and they were reverse banding the hack squat. And when you could drop the machine and the bands would stop it like halfway down, which tells you they're doing no weight for the first half of that movement. And I was just kind of like, let me guess, 3 high school kids, shirts off, videos out, trying to rep out, 2 plates with the thickest Elite FTS band they sell. This kid got into it with me and he was trying to and I'm like, bro, my argument is not that bands don't have a place. My argument is that bands do not have a place in your arsenal. If you cannot hack squat 6 plates minimum, you can't back barbell squat 4 plates minimum, you can't bench press 3 plates minimum. I think there's you don't need those tools until you reach a certain strength level where your strength becomes dangerous to your joints. I think that's where you use that stuff. You don't start using it right off day one because you're going to inhibit your growth. What are you going to do? Yeah, I could go off on a tangent. I won't.
Yeah, I'm sure none of them were dealing with some sort of back issue or knee issue. You know what I mean? They're just
18-year-old kids, at the prime of their life.
They were finding a way to put more weight on there. There's one exercise that I want to real quick give John credit for, because the one exercise that cannot be argued or disputed that is better with a band is a banded dumbbell pullover. That was brilliant.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Absolutely. It's a pain in the butt because then people have to watch where you're going. You got to have it set up evenly so that the pull is not to one side or the other. But that was good. That was it was brilliant.
For arms, I like to finish with something where I can really get that almost like a drop set type thing at the end. I don't always do that, but if maybe my last exercise is going to be more of that pumping type thing, and I've done it where maybe I'll pick an exercise and then I'll superset it with a band that's connected to say the floor, where I can pull it up like this and squeeze, you know what I mean? Just squeeze the band in a hammer curl and then slowly let it down and squeeze just the band. So it's not even using it with something else. Do that exercise and then superset it with that at the end for 5 reps. 3 sets or whatever.
I like to finish with hammer curls because they're a really good pump, but I also think they look really cool because I bring them up to my mouth. And I just, yeah. And I've had people take pictures of me. I think they were pretty impressed with my intensity. I think hopefully it got posted online. I'm pretty sure.
All right, let's cover some questions, guys.
Andrew.
So, Vasco says, how would one go about assessing his or her level of insulin resistance? Are fasted glucose levels a good indicator, or does one need to monitor insulin response following a meal at several intervals to better assess it? It's interesting because he messaged me the other day. I don't know if it was before or after he made this was 1 day ago. So it was after he said he had high fasted blood glucose. It was over 100. And he just got back from vacation or something like that. And I said, well, before you run and do anything, check your postprandial. See what your blood sugar is after a high carb meal, 1 hour after, 2 hour after. So now he wants to ask the group. And I also told him to get an A1C. So that was my input. But what do you guys think about all this?
I would definitely.
I don't know that A1C is a great indicator. Go ahead, Andrew.
I think it's a good indicator. And I was going to add that you can now get A1C monitors off of Amazon. So we can monitor that stuff ourselves without having to get blood work done.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They sell monitors just the same way they sell glucometers. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, here's why I say that. A1C is cumulative. It's more over the last few months. You could become more insulin resistant in the last couple of weeks, and it may not show on your past A1C. So I think what I'm saying is there's a little bit of a lag. I think that your current blood sugar levels have a little bit better or a little bit more of a They're a better indicator, I think, of what's going on right now. Like as an example, he could have been like super clean and everything, had a good A1C. Then he went on vacation for a week and a half and ate like dog shit and came back and he's running high fasted glucose, and that it may stay that way for a couple weeks or a week or whatever.
But I don't think that I've seen people have fasted blood glucose that it starts just going up in the morning, like after they've been fasted for a certain length of time, then it starts climbing back up. So my thought on getting an A1C is, let's see if are you having a long-term health issue here? You know what I'm saying?
With that.
Exactly. Are you having a long-term health issue here that we're not recognizing? Like I work with another guy who's like, "Hey, I've had a really hard time losing fat. You know, he's always struggled. And my previous coach had me on all this growth hormone and all this gear, and it still was. And he was kind of ashamed of how much gear he was using. And we got an A1C and found out that he was borderline diabetic. So he had never tested his blood sugar before. So to me, I think what we're seeing here is you're saying that that's too long, but I'm saying one reading is too short.
Well, what I'm saying, I should be more clear. I'm saying not to rely on one, because if you rely on the A1C, then you have the current condition of your blood sugar levels. Then if you rely on fasted, there's quite a few variables in there too, because you even know that when you run keto for a long period of time, you can have issues with fasted blood sugar levels in the morning. So a better way to put it would be they all need to be taken into consideration, but not. I don't know that one more than any of the other two or three. I think that they all need to be measured or used together to accurately assess what's going on.
To get a complete picture.
Do you guys also request that people get their insulin checked when they're doing their labs? Because then you can use the HOMA IR scale and figure out where they sit, right? If you guys know what the HOMA IR is?
If I was working with him, I would have him get his insulin checked. Is that a word? It's checked.
I thought you were saying checked in.
Checked in. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Checked in. Also, I'll just throw it out there too that Alto Labs has A1C for like $12. So go get it real quick. But
do you guys understand what I was talking about the HOMA IR scale? Like it's a quick and easy thing to calculate.
Run it down though.
So basically you take their blood sugar and it also takes their insulin at the same time, so that it gives a comparative as to how much insulin is needed to take care of this blood sugar, basically. That's it in a nutshell, right? So there's a bunch of calculators out there. You can use that one. There's the Quickie scale. There's several of these indices out there that you could put in your fasted glucose, your fasted insulin levels, and that will give you a breakdown as to how insulin sensitive or insensitive someone is. Like, for instance, if someone is over 2.0 on the HOMA scale, their insulin sensitivity is sliding, and that'll be backed up by their H1C and their fasted glucose. So that's why I think like the trump card of all those is, you start doing fasted glucose with somebody and, 3-4 readings back to back to back, it's high. Okay, then you look at the H1C. It confirms that it's high. It confirms that they've had sliding insulin sensitivity for a while. Then you get the labs done and you look at the insulin, the blood sugar, you put it into one of these calculators, and you can determine, this is based off their insulin production or release, based off their blood sugar. This is what's really going on. And I think all three of those are great tools.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think
covered it perfectly.
and what about, I'll add one more thing, that because like you said, Skip, there could be a lot of variables with fasted. So his other question was what I had mentioned to him about testing postprandial to see, do you guys ever test to see how people respond to a carb meal?
Well, but you see this, sometimes someone will wake up and they will be tending on the higher side, let's say like 94, 96, something like that regularly. But then you're like, okay, I want you to do exactly what you're saying. I want you to eat your meals. Let's say we got 60 grams of carbs per meal, and you're testing their postprandial at 2 hours exactly, every meal on the dot. And at 2 hours on the dot, they're always back down to like 89. Well, to me, that tells me they got good insulin sensitivity. They're just having a little bit of a higher release of glucagon in the morning. Maybe, and the other thing we're not bringing up is, why is their blood sugar, or why are they losing insulin sensitivity if that is the case?
Yes.
Is it an overfeeding thing? Is it a stress thing? Is it a lack of sleep thing? Because just a night of sleep, you start to lose your insulin sensitivity due to the lack of translocation of the GLUT4 receptors. But So there's a lot of variables when someone has high blood sugar. It could be that you're feeding them too much and they're just not doing enough activity. It could be a stress-related response, or it could be something else related to insulin, glucagon, cortisol, one of those other hormones.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. I hope that helps him. What else did we have here, guys?
I got one more thing to add, actually.
Yeah.
One more thing to add. That because he asked for like how else do you determine your insulin sensitivity besides these calculators, besides these meters that we can use, besides the blood work. Well, I have yet to see somebody with really poor insulin sensitivity that is hungry every 2 hours. Meaning, like, think about your contest prep people. Like, you just know their insulin sensitivity is good. You don't even need them to check anymore unless you're doing like a really high skip load or a refeed day, because you just know when they're reporting on their check-ins, eat my meal, 30 minutes later, I could eat all over again, even if they're eating a lot of carbs too. So I do think hunger and satiety can be used as preliminary markers, at least.
That's a good point. All right. How about this one here? He's asking about question for the next show. Does injecting sterile oil into a muscle before training done to create a crazy pump, will this result in more gains in the long run?
So I can only attribute this to using like an SEO type product. I think that's what he's referring to, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think he just said sterile oil. So he's, I think
I think he's just saying like almost versus an SEO, just something that would take up space.
Isn't that
prior
what
to
SEO
training? It is, but I think sterile oil wouldn't have, well, depending on the SEO, because you could argue that some of them are much thinner, where the old school ones are so much thicker and viscous, and they're going to stay there longer. So, yeah.
And the original ones had like all sorts of like lidocaine and weird stuff in it, like that, you know.
Between pump and pose and between all the different brands. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess, is it going to create... okay, when I've done that, I wouldn't say I have a better pump. I feel like I have like a rock in my, like, let's say biceps. I feel like I have rocks in my biceps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really feel great. I mean, it kind of feels good, but then you're like, man, there's like almost too much stuff in there that I can't get a good pump.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have a
but
lot of
it
experience.
visually looks like a big pump. I mean,
if you do it the right way.
Feel like it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you're doing it the right way.
But does it cause growth? I think the argument stands from years ago that the only real growth potential there is the fact that it could, and I still can't say that it does, but it could help to stretch fascia, to make more room in fascia. We're a limiting factor for growth. But growth, does it cause growth at the muscle cell level? No.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%.
On that point, like I'm actually against doing SEO right before you go to the gym and training that muscle group, just because I feel like when the muscle already has that much stuff in it, then you're throwing blood in there. I just feel like you're opening up opportunity to tearing something. That it just kind of makes sense to me that would happen. So like for me, like an SEO, I tell people to do it right before bed so that you're sleeping through that inflammation pain part of it. And when by the time you wake up, some of that's died down a little bit, and you're like, oh, my arm's just full. You know what I'm saying? Like
I don't want to get off on a tangent, but can I real quick, because I think this is important, and I'm wondering what you guys think. Just real quick though, gear timing pre-workout versus post-workout and I'll tell you why I prefer it post-workout, because you get into that thing where, look, I think I lose contractile force. I don't think, and I always go left and right. Like if I'm doing, quads or I'm doing delts, or I will go left or right. I will not do one over the other, because then I have an imbalance, and especially when there's a limiting, I think it limits contractile force. I don't feel the muscle contract as hard. I'm not usually as strong in the muscle if I were to inject prior. So I inject afterwards, and I feel like the muscle is still warm. There's a little bit more blood flow than had I not trained at all. Now, I'm not going to race home and go, oh yeah, I got to hurry up and get, it's not like this anabolic window. It's just that within those few hours afterwards, I find that that's the best time, and it's tolerated the best from the standpoint of the muscle being injected versus I feel like when it's cold, which is another reason that I actually heat up the under warm running water. I heat up the actual
I've done
compound, the syringe, always, especially if it's DHB. But anyway, again, I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but I think that it's
You're about to get off on another one.
Yeah, but I think it's in line with what we're talking about. But okay, then let's bring it back to the SEO. Yeah. Would you do it afterwards versus before?
Well, like you said, Andrew, you said after, right? Like before bed.
I would say do it right before bed so that you sleep through the pain of it. Because your arms can throw up when you're putting 3 cc's in 2 different spots. Like that's 6 cc's in the biceps and in the tri. So like I'd rather sleep through that personally. But to answer your question about the gear, I agree with you about the contractibility, I guess. Like if you do your delts, right? Yeah, let's say you do a rear delt shot. This is the biggest example I can think of. You do a rear delt, you do both rear delts, and then you're trying to do a rear delt exercise. All you feel is like inhibition, I guess is the best way to put it. Like you can't get the muscle all the way back. So I 100% agree with you. Mm-hmm. For me with injections, I think doing it before bed, because I take a shower before bed. My body's cleanest, my skin's warm. To me, that's what time makes the most sense, unless I'm using something that will have an effect on my workout, such as an oral or a fast, test, or a fast, one of the injectable methyl trends or something like that.
Well, then the takeaway here is not necessarily that, okay, it's post-workout or before bed, but it's not pre-workout, which is what I was coming around to. No. So whether it's oil or whether it's gear or anything, I don't think injecting anything pre-workout is a great, unless it's,
I agree.
Unless you're going to get into, there's growth and there's insulin, that's different. But
that's different.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with you.
Let's see here. So Ghost BC says a question for the next show. Feeder workouts. Have you guys ever experimented with this? Rich Piana, RIP, used to mention them, to do them at night with light weight to get as much blood as possible into the muscle. He was thinking of this because his forearm to arm ratio does not match, and his bis and tris need to improve. Seems like forearms get a pump daily because I tend to activate them more than I'd like to, and they are a good size and even have way more muscle maturity than the other muscles. I've never worked out forearms directly, LOL, but I need these arms to grow, and I've tried everything. Well, hopefully he listened to the first half of the podcast, so there's that.
I know what the LOL means. He's never trained forearms directly.
Oh, get it. LOL.
You guys were slacking. I picked up on it. I read you. No, I think for muscle growth, I think that's not a good idea. I think for a cosmetic effect, possibly, in terms of, like, you guys have probably done this where you have a client go and do what you call like a pump workout or a loading workout before a show, literally just to facilitate pushing more carbs, get them super insulin sensitive to facilitate pushing more carbs into the muscle. And we're not talking about a workout even. It's more like 2 sets of chest, 2 sets of shoulders, 2 sets of back, like nothing to failure, just to facilitate blood flow and increase the glucose uptake of the cells, because glycogen synthetase is going to be working overtime then. But I don't think the idea of doing these, what do you call them, feeder workouts, I think, I mean, I'm bringing myself back to like reading Cycles for Pennies the first time, and all the stupid things that Dante talked about seeing in people do in the gym that were inhibiting their muscle growth. And I see this as one of those things that's just going to cut into your recovery. It's just going to cut into your recovery. I'll leave it at that. I don't think I need to add anything else.
Yeah. If you need to add, if you're going to get a lot of blood flow, you're basically wasting glycogen on what is not a productive workout. Now, I see feeder. I don't think feeder workouts are a bad idea, but I would see a feeder workout as 2 to 3 sets of one light exercise. It's more like an isolation movement the night before or the morning before an evening workout that does more for neural connection than it does for blood flow or anything along. He was talking more primarily about blood flow. And I think as soon as the more pump you're getting, essentially the more fuel you're wasting for that to train that muscle. And I think that's a bad idea.
Well, I guess, do you guys have an idea of how he's setting it up? Like, is he doing a feeder workout the night before he's doing his main workout for that body part? Is he doing it on off days? Okay, yeah. I don't agree with that.
That's how
it reminds me of Yeah, it kind of reminds me of remember that bodybuilder? I think it was like he was a Canadian guy, big in the '90s, Olympian. Charles, was it like Grawl or something like that? You know what I'm talking about? He was in all the mock videos.
Okay.
Charles. Well, anyway, he would let's say he trained his delts and triceps on a Monday. He would go in on Tuesday and he would do like half his workout for the shoulders again, like some of the same exercises, but a little bit lighter. And he claimed that facilitated blood flow to enhance recovery and make them grow faster. And to me, I'm like, you're only getting away with that because you're a genetically elite pro, like who grows off of everything. I've seen all sorts of
really good pros who do some crazy stuff. You know what I mean? Like I do,
and it works despite what they're doing, not because of what they're doing. Yeah, that's the big distinction. It works despite what they're doing, not because of what they're doing.
Like when a really good pro who I've had this happen explain to me how he does his bicep curls a certain way so he can hit the peak. I mean, the guy had the best peaks you would see in your entire life, but I think it was, despite what he was doing with his arm training. Right?
His baby picture when he's in the womb is like, he's got this like double stacked peak bicep,
Yeah. I'll be curious if you guys know anything about this one, because it's something I have no experience with. I've heard of it, but that's about it. Question for BSG. Do you guys have any experience with sibutramine or similar compounds? I don't hear a lot of people talking about it over here in the Balkans. Hell yeah. I want to know where this guy trains. I want to see his gym, because I feel like a gym in the Balkans would be freaking wild. Pretty much nobody knows about it. My coach even asked me not to tell anyone. Well, it's pretty public now. Not to tell anyone around here. Honestly, it's a prep hack. Anybody can get shredded with it, if you ask me. If you have any experience or know any more knowledge about it, I would like to hear about any possible side effects or whatever you think about it. I've used it for the last 3 preps, and I would never again do a prep and go through last week's without it. Sibutramine.
I've never used it with myself or anybody. I know what it is, and I know it's more popular in Europe.
Is it?
Yeah, like I've heard of other Europeans.
I think it
might have been used
like an inhibitor.
What is it? It goes by a different name. It's like
it inhibits reuptake of serotonin and norepinephrine. Yeah, Meridia. Yep,
there you go. There you go. Yep.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember what it was.
That was a flash in the pan in the U.S. in the 2000s. Yeah. Like I feel like I read about it in muscular development in the drugs section. Maybe Dave or somebody did like a little spiel on it, how you use it. I don't think it really took off over here because you got Clen, you got T3, you got cardio. Like it's not a go-to.
Things that actually
norepinephrine and serotonin.
For a lot of people.
Norepinephrine and serotonin reuptake inhibitor.
Yeah.
So you would feel. I mean, that means you would have more norepinephrine
here's where
in your system.
Here's where I think it could help. I think when you're using it, say with like clenbuterol and other stims that increase norepinephrine, I think it'll amplify the effect in the same way that like a GHRH will amplify a GHRP. You know what I'm saying? Like the CJC to the GHRP6, I feel like it probably amplifies the effect longer.
And you're messing with serotonin too, so like now your serotonin's higher. Yeah, I could see it being weird for some people,
Sure.
Well, you have a fire burning and you're ripping through a lot of wood, and then all of a sudden you're like, "That's not a big enough fire. I'm going to throw 3 gallons of gasoline on it."
Right.
I mean, really, that's really what I don't see it being beneficial. And let's call a spade a spade. If it were that good, we would have a lot of experience with it because we would have been using it, and it would be used by the vast majority of people in what is arguably the leading country for bodybuilding, nutrition, supplementation, and I don't want to say cutting edge because that's cliche, but methods and everything. And it's not, I don't think it's used. If it's used incredibly minimally.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be real careful with it if I were him too. I think about post prep, the come down that you can have from that. You're coming off the gear, true. You're coming off the Clen. Mm-hmm. Now you're coming off this drug that kept your serotonin and norepinephrine high. Oh man, I feel like it would be
add like hot
garbage.
You're losing you're physically fading in the sense you lose your cuts, that you're not as diced as you were. And that has a major effect on people's mentality and their depression levels and all that kind of stuff. So like you're saying, Scott, you add in a chemical component to that to amplify it.
Yeah.
Eesh.
I mean, we're already really,
yeah,
you're already really messing with that stuff, you know, with the things we're using. So I'd be careful.
Yeah. I also want to point out he's got a hilarious bodybuilding podcast. Like his commentary is, oh dude, it's like, I think I told you guys one time,
that's
like
him.
Me and my buddy, me and Nate Spear, we were watching his breakdown of like the Texas Pro from last year, and we got like tree high, man. We were so high, but like he was like breaking down the show, and he was like complimenting, you know, that guy Florian, who was an open guy and moved to Classic.
Yeah,
he was like complimenting him and then doing like 3 disses, like in a backhanded compliment kind of way. Like me and Nate were literally on the ground, like crying, laughing. And I had to send it to all my buddies, and they're like, dude, you're right. This is the funniest podcast. So dude, you got a great entertaining show. I love it.
Yeah, when you told me that, I didn't watch that one, but I watched like 3 other of his videos. He has really good delivery too. You know, like he does a good job. People should check him out, especially if they enjoy the competitive side of bodybuilding.
Yes.
All right. We got one from Raiden Sky here. I met Raiden out at FIBO.
From question for the Mortal Kombat?
No, different Raiden Sky. Okay. Question for the next podcast: how can I determine my skin thickness? Every time I try to cut, I get to a certain point. My body seems to refuse to get lower with body fat. When I go tanning, my abs are full and with veins. But when I crunch, my abs, it looks fat AF. Surely there's still body fat to lose, but is there a test to find out if I might also have thicker skin that makes it harder to get detailed and separated looking? I bulked up pretty hard, once beyond 25%. Also, I got stretch marks from the time on my stomach. Thanks for your help. I saw him in person.
Who's going to say it?
I saw him in person. He just needs to get leaner. I saw his abs. He looks good. He's lean now, but now he's at the point where he just needs to keep going, and that's all it's going to take. Because I was standing right there with him.
Yeah. Skin thickness is body fat. The only exception to that would be collagen. The only exception to that is collagen. When you're younger, you could have, like as an example, Jay Cutler he was ripped, shredded, and he had thicker skin. Victor Martinez is another good example. He had, they both had thicker skin because they could carry a higher body fat level because of the shape of everything underneath it. You could do this with a lot of competitors. Everybody is fighting for the shredded, grainy, ridiculously thin. And there's a lot of people who lose a lot of muscle getting down to that condition or fighting to get to that. And if they had the shape, that's the bitch with, us also rans or mediocre bodybuilders. We have to find where that balance is. And sometimes it's not about getting or fighting to get as shredded as you possibly can, because you could lose another 10 pounds and you don't look as good as you did 10 pounds heavier, and you're not really any leaner. So there's a collagen component, because as we age, we lose that. That's the grainy. People call it muscle maturity. I laugh at that. It's basically you lose collagen and your skin becomes thinner as you get older. It's older skin. You get grainier.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we had some more.
I'll also say one thing.
Yeah.
If you have, and I know we've all dealt with clients with this that want to do a show and they really, really ballooned up, heavy body fat, and then they diet down and they have the loose skin around their abdominals. And people are always asking, like, well, when's this going to go away? And I've seen it go one way where somebody loses all of that and it looks like they never had skin flaps. And I've had other people get peeled everywhere, and the only thing that's going to fix it is cosmetic surgery. So it's one of those things that if you overbulked and permabulked for a long period of time, you might need to be ready to have to go see a surgeon if you really want to have that skin sit tight to your abdominals without having to like tuck it and push down with your hands.
Yeah, Raiden's not one of those guys. Older guys, his skin was tight. Okay. Yeah, his skin was good.
Okay. Yeah. And if you're an older guy, you're a masters competitor, you're almost always going to deal with loose skin at some point. You better make sure that your ass is full. It's the bane of a Masters competitor because, yes, you need to be in condition, but I would rather, if it's me and I'm getting on a Masters stage, I'm going to err a little bit on the side of being more full so that, you know what, maybe I'd take second, but my ass don't look fucking old like I got old skin. There's older guys battle with that because it's a reminder that you're busting your butt and you're doing everything you used to do and you're in great shape and you're in great condition, but the skin is not as elastic as it used to be when you were younger. It's just the way it is.
All right, we are out of time for this episode, guys. That said, before we leave, Skip, can you give us some fatherly advice? It has nothing to do with bodybuilding. I want something from you. What's one piece of fatherly advice that you can share with us?
Yeah, today? I did this. Somebody said this on the because I said that the guy who, which congratulations to him. I didn't know he won 10 grand for that. That's pretty impressive.
I didn't know what the F you're talking about. Oh, this is.
Okay. Are you serious? I thought that's what this is coming from.
No, okay, I just literally. Somebody said you're going on without us. You're having a conversation on your own here.
Funny. I thought there are people who are watching who probably saw the comment on Facebook. Oh, shit.
I know the comments talking about, but I was just asking for some fatherly advice for the listeners.
Oh. Yeah, I can't come with any right off the top of my head, but I'm just trying to be helpful.
Well, tell us, what was your advice to him?
Just to make sure that he because he won 10 grand, and the IRS will get you for that. Yeah, if you don't report it as a gain, like a gambling, but they'll wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they'll nail you with the penalties and the fees, and there is no way out of it because you won that money. So you're better off claiming it right away or keeping a portion of it back, claiming it right away, paying it, get it done, and being happy that you won it, and you get to spend the money without worrying about the IRS 5 years later.
Shout out to Jake. He looked fantastic. We put his pictures up in the last episode.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, go to bodyberry.com. Reach out to Andrew for some coaching. Go to teamskip.com. Reach out to Skip for some coaching, but not at the same time. Reach out to me, mcnallydiets@gmail.com. Same thing. I'd be happy to talk to you about coaching. And, of course, check out our sponsors. As I mentioned, truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK. Supplementsource.ca for great deals that change week to week for our Canadians. And STROM Sports Nutrition for those of you in the UK. Great health supplements, great health stacks, and some performance stuff, too. Guys, for another episode of Blood, Sweat, and Gear, we'll see you soon.